maybe let's like look at the things that Gibbon said about the cause of the fall of the Roman Empire, and then sort of go into what you and John sort of discuss as the actual causes of the fall of the Roman Empire. So what was Gibbon's conclusion basically that
Well, he was very interested in size. He called it a stupendous fabric that was bound to fall apart. And I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, actually, in reality. But uh, he was interested in the sort of moral decline, really. The early Greek historians who are charting the rise of Rome stress the kind of austerity of early Romans and the refusal to give way to vices of luxury and whatever. And this was the standard Roman critique of the Greeks. That yes, they were very civilized, but they really loved luxury and they were soft,
mm,
you know. So he was mostly interested in the kind of moral decline of the Romans, in which he gave a bit part to Christianity.
mm,
Although I think he was slightly taking the piss out of Christianity, to be honest, saying that Christianity made them more pacifist, when of course, we've seen Christians perfectly happy to knock nine bells of whatever out of each other ever since. So I think he was slightly, it's his anti-clericalism slightly he's messing with a little bit. But it is that kind of the loss of the moral character with Christianity as part of that he's fundamentally interested in,
mm,
and where he's locating it. So it's a lack of will,
mm.
I think,
So a
in
bit
the
like
end.
they sort of just like got a bit they got too fat and happy and
Yes,
successful, and they
yes,
all sort of became a little bit
took their eyes off what was needed to maintain the structure.
a little bit too decadent, and
Yeah,
sort of they became the embodiment of is it Dionysus?
yes,
Yeah.
got it. Yes, absolutely.
So then why is that not accurate? Like what's the reality? Like what
Well,
actually happened?
I mean, in a sense, part of it is accurate. In the sense, they were
Yeah.
corrupt and whatever. But on the other hand, they were during the period of the Roman rise
Yeah.
too. This is, there's a lovely book written by a very nice man who used to teach ancient history at Yale called Ramsay MacMullen, which lovingly lines up every moment an instance of corruption reported in late Roman sources, which is fine. But you could do the same for the early Roman period.
Yeah.
you know, they weren't any less corrupt when they were creating the empire than they were when it fell apart. That's just the way of it. Human beings, well, we are what we are. We've been anatomically the same for 30,000 years, and the drivers are the same, and we maximize in similar ways. And it, when push comes to shove, it's an unsatisfactory way of explaining things because the drivers behind our behavior are always constant. So, you've got to work very hard to come up with that argument. Um, People had given up on the kind of, moral decadence by the start of the 20th century. They still had the same chronology as Gibbon, but they were going for kind of economic decline.
Mm-hmm.
So the there's a body of very learned scholarship that's appearing in the first half of the 20th century, and they're convinced that it's a social and economic decline as people became more interested. They're not really doing economics in 1776. By the 20th century, they are for all kinds of reasons, and they thought that they could see in late Roman sources of one kind and another plenty of evidence for economic collapse. So we've got the same chronology, but it's economics, not moral decay. Um, And as we talked about, the pottery shows that that's not right either. So we can't locate it easily, I think, either in sort of lack of a will to dominate, because actually the Romans are still fighting lots of wars in the fourth century
Mm.
and fighting them very effectively. And nor can we locate it very easily in some kind of social and economic dislocation, because that's, again, not what the material suggests. And in fact, even before the archaeological data set became available, the man who wrote the longest book about the late Roman Empire, a Cambridge historian called A.H.M. Jones, he'd already smelt a rat because he'd read every late Roman source there was, and he's very suspicious. And it's a book called The Social and Economic History of the Later Roman Empire, and it's published in 1964. And you can see he's already thinking this narrative of economic decline is actually wrong. He can't see it. He's read all the papyri from Egypt as well as all the sort of standard texts, and he doesn't see this economic decay that's supposed to be there. And in fact, he's shown to be correct by the stuff that starts coming out in the 17th and 18th.
Mm. So then, what is in your conception the thing that did cause the collapse?
Well, I think it is the change in the balance of power that peripheral development generates. Um, I, it's fair to say that governing the Roman Empire was never easy.
Mm.
Internal factors are really a part of this. The scale is huge always, and I certainly think that governing the Roman Empire becomes more difficult because of changes to the empire itself. Um, in the book, um, for me, a big leap was starting to think about empires as systems, not as things. So they've got moving parts. They're not always the same thing. And a huge change within the Roman world is the fact that the provincial Roman elites buy into Romanness and become Romans. My old Ladybird book of British history that I had in the 1960s.
Mm.
My mother was a great history buff. It's all her fault that I'm doing history for a living. So I got given Ladybird books of British history in about 1964 and 1965. One picture was of the Romans leaving, and it was 3 soldiers and an administrator getting on a boat, and a few broken signposts with the old Roman names of things on them. And that's, at that time, that was the image of Roman Britain. It was just, 3 Romans occupying a bunch of Brits who were busy painting themselves blue with woad, and it was not a big phenomenon.
Mm.
We now know that's completely wrong. By the 4th century, the local British landowning elites have entirely bought into Romanness. They are Roman. They live in villas. Their children are taught Latin. They participate in imperial political structures. They belong to the court career structures. They're doing all of these things. And this is a transformation that you find, again, right across this huge expanse that is the Roman Empire, that the local provincial elites stop being conquered subjects and start becoming Romans.
Mm.
In some ways, it's a huge success story. I mean, it's as though, say, we had a few Indian princes who came to Eton and learnt how to play cricket. It's as though all the landowners of India came to British public schools and learnt how to play cricket. It's that transfer of culture. You can see it a bit in the British Empire, but it's like that on speed in the Roman Empire. So it's a huge success, and by the 4th century, it's fundamentally holding the empire together, that these elites do see themselves as all part of the same cultural structure. But it complicates government because it means that you've changed from being a conquest state run for the benefit of a very few rich people in central and southern Italy to being much more a kind of commonwealth community where provincial elites matter and where they have political voices and where there are lots of contending agendas, and you're having to balance patronage between them and listen enough to enough people. Mm. So internal politics become more difficult. This absolutely so. But it's kind of, I think, in a kind of interesting way, a product of imperial success that is so. But be that as may, certainly running the empire is more difficult by the 4th century. There are more voices, they're pushing in different directions. Um, on the other hand, we see no sign of large-scale fragmentation within the empire. The political struggle is to control the empire in the 4th century, not to break away from it from within the empire. Where the shift comes, I think, is then in these peripheral powers. The rise of bigger, more powerful barbarian confederations. Um, by the 4th century, they've taken a little bit of Roman territory. In the 3rd century, the Romans abandoned Transylvanian Dacia, so modern Romania, within the ring of the Carpathians, and a lump of territory between the Upper Rhine and the Upper Danube, a triangle of territory. Cost benefit analysis had obviously made the Romans decide it was too difficult to hold that, and that was a reflection on one level of the rise of these confederations and how much pressure they were exerting now on the frontier. Um, so, to my mind, the really important shift is what's happening beyond the frontier. That's, as it were, the relative power balance, the strategic relative power balance between the Roman world and the non-Roman world is what's really on the move here.
Yeah, it strikes me as there's as being sort of disturbingly similar to what we've seen in sort of the 20th 21st century. I say disturbingly similar. It's not exactly like it's a bad thing to watch other parts of the world having been built up, but I mean the sort of the post, especially the post World War II, like Bretton Woods era, they the West and primarily America have exported capitalism and consumer capitalism and sort of enriched and built up a large parts of the world, and to the point where, so for example in America, the manufacturing base has been exported
Yes.
to other countries. The the share of the global economy and global GDP has continued to decline, and it's really worrying, I guess, in the sense that, like, are we about to see the same collapse for the West as such? Like, are we about to witness the same thing happen, in that, will we fragment and turn to infighting, and are we going to see Europe break up, or schisms with North America and the Commonwealth, and in the case of Britain appear? Like, is that what you sort of foresee happening?
I think I foresee it as one possible way forward, because I think we're only at a stage, for the most part, where decline is relative, not absolute. We haven't got poorer. Well, not really. We're on the cusp, maybe. What's happened is the rest of the world has got richer, certainly up until very recent times. The rest of the world's got richer. We've also continued to get a bit wealthier, just nothing like the growth rates of the 50s and the 60s. That's the point. But that is now reached a point where it is posing challenges to us as to what we choose to do going forwards and how we respond to this. And there are lots of different ways of responding to it, some of which, and this is what John and I were playing with in the last part of the book, is trying to think about, the first point is this: the relative decline is a fact of life, and it is not going to change, in the sense that you've shifted the tectonic plates of the world economy in a very structural way. America and Western domination of industrial wealth generation, that was true after 1945, will never return. It can never return. That's not going to happen. America can re-industrialize to some extent, but it won't stop other places being industrial. So, you might decide to expand elements of your industrial base, but it won't make China's industrial capacity or India's industrial capacity, or increasingly the manufacturing capacity in parts of Africa or South America. It won't make those goes away. So you will never recreate the situation of the 1950s, 1960s. So that's a fact of life. So what you have to do is think about how do you best maximize your position given that reality, and moving forward from here. And I think there are some choices that could maintain steady prosperity, and there are some other choices that could certainly lead to substantial problems.
Marketing agencies, listen up. I know you're stressed, so I'm gonna let you do less work and get better results. I'm talking about Ad Creative AI. I wanna show you some of my favorite features. Paste your landing page, and then in just a few steps, Ad Creative AI will have enough information to generate hundreds of ad creative. Check out the ad text. Each one has a copywriting method that you're familiar with, and they even have suggested audiences. And now you have your complete strategy and asset for your client. This is the text projects feature. Obviously, they're gonna generate you some compelling ad copy that's focused on driving results. They have over 250 million ad text and headlines, which is way more than you and I could read in our lifetime. This is your brand CTR score compared to your competitors, your ad fatigue, and even best performing colors, labels, and ad text, as well as your top creatives. They even turned this into a PDF so you can send it directly to your clients. You can now sell Ad Creative AI to your clients while making it look like your own internal tool with your own colors and logo. If you're interested in any of these sweet new features, check out Ad Creative AI's agency package.
Hey everyone, thanks for making it right the way to the end of the podcast. I love that you tuned in this long. Do me a favor, hit subscribe, because 80% of you bastards are not subscribing, but you're watching my videos. See you next time.